Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I'm Menas. I'm joined by Paul Dennett, and I finally got sick of Jaleesa apps, and I said to her, "Don't bother coming today. I'm sick of the lag. I'm sick of all the messing around with the times." And instead, I've replaced her with Sharbul Khoury from Crickblog. Sharbul, how are you?
I'm well, Menas. It's great to finally chat to you on a show, and it's
Oh,
good to see you again, Paul.
I'm
Yeah.
stunned talking to someone that's not on a minute delay. It's incredible. We can actually have a back and forth conversation for this recording.
Hopefully you don't jinx it.
Yeah, quite. Jaleesa has actually had to pull out because she's got work commitments, which is a blessing in disguise. So she's heading off to Bathurst, so she won't be joining us this week, but we'll catch up with her post the Bathurst 1000. A lot of cricket news to get to. Obviously, still reeling from Tim Payne stepping away and Pat Cummins being given the job. So I want to reflect on that a little bit more. Then we'll get into the headlines and then wrap it up with Can't Let It Go. But let's, I guess, start. We jumped on and recorded straight after the news was announced that Cummins would be the new Test captain and Steve Smith would be vice captain. I guess, Sharbul, how have you reflected on those two appointments?
Yeah, I was of the opinion, I think it was a bit of an unpopular opinion, maybe according to some, that Steve Smith should be the skipper again, just given the situation we're in. And it's probably the best for Australian cricket right now because I'm looking forward to next year as well. We've got like 3 tours of the subcontinent, and you've got a pace bowler who's captain there. That might be tough. So I was thinking ahead after the Ashes too, but so happy for Cummins. It's been a great journey for him since he started out. He's had injuries along the way, but over the last couple of years, he's been outstanding with the ball, and I think he's got the makings of a wonderful leader. I'm just looking forward to seeing how he juggles the physical toll of pace bowling and then having to captain on top of that. So very happy for him. And look, I think it's a good thing that Steve Smith's alongside him as well to assist him. I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, how have you sort of settled on it?
Oh, I was very happy with Cummins being made captain. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how much of an impact, if any, he has on the demeanour of the side. That we've always, I found it really fascinating in the excerpts I've read from Greg Chappell's new books of a book of the conversation he had with Darren Lehmann, where Lehmann sort of said, "But mate, we have to play that aggressive way. You guys did it." And Greg Chappell said, "Well, actually, no, we didn't. There's the odd bit of word here or there, but the level of sledging that is engaged these days is totally different to what we did." And that 70s Australian side is known as the hardest side of all time. So when you hear them saying we didn't need to do it, and you look at all the examples of when we have really been ultra macho out on the field, and it's almost always backfired. That the whole sandpaper gate escalated out of poor behaviour. Even Tim Payne, the joking remark that he made to Ashwin, want to get you up to the Gabba. They have T-shirts printed in India now that you can buy saying "Can't wait to get you to the Gabba, Ash." Whereas you look at Pat Cummins, and as far as I'm aware, he doesn't engage in sledging and everything else. And what's the outcome? Well, he's the number 1 bowler in the world, and he's just broken 145 years of tradition by being named the first Australian regular fast bowler as a captain. So you'd have to say actually behaving the right way works. Wouldn't it be wonderful if Australia went down that path as a team as well? Now, Menas is going to straight away say, "Oh, we don't want to become like New Zealand and all this," but I think there's a lot to like about the way that New Zealand actually approach the game and comport themselves. And I'd love it if Cummins drove the side in that direction.
Yeah, I think Cummins is a great representative of Australia. He's said all the right things in his press conferences since he's been made captain. And to your concerns, Sharbul, I think what's great about Cummins is I think he's going to be willing to let Smith take the reins in the field. So you're right. It's a hot day in India. They've been fielding. Cummins has just bowled 10 overs in 40-degree heat. He can't really set the field. I don't think he's going to have a problem saying to Smudge, "You take over for the next few overs." So I'm glad they have that relationship. Cummins has said that they're great mates and that, they live near each other and they socialise together. So I think hopefully there'll be a great combination But I think concerns about Smith getting the captaincy after Sandpapergate were well founded. I think even in the vice captaincy, there was a small backlash. So I can imagine if he was made captain, it would have been a lot more. That's all right, Chub. I'll let your phone ring. I'm used to it with Jalisa.
Sorry, I'm going to put
normally it's a
put it on
car
silent.
getting towed, or you just drop off. Just drop off now while I ask you the question. That'll be on form.
One of the great pleasures of being on the show is you get to experience Mena's unfettered passive aggressiveness live.
Yes, you can't get away with anything, can you?
My
So what was
internet
your
is
question going to
terrible.
be, Menace?
Well,
My
I was just
internet
going
is
to
terrible, and I've been lucky that it's Jaleesa's is slightly worse. Anyway, go on.
Your internet's been fantastic in the last.
I
couple
know.
of weeks.
I've had to make it that way because I'm too scared of the alternative.
You're like
really
your
hope
family's
doesn't go
in the
out.
next room with the light off, no power, not allowed to
My
use their
wife's
phones.
riding a generator as we speak, like cycling around.
Yeah, look, I don't know if I had a question, Chubb. I don't know where I was. The phone going off.
Talking about Cummins turning to Smith.
I was talking about the Smith.
That's a good aspect.
Smith and the Smith backlash. The fact that there are some bloody hardliners out there that think Smith and Warner should never get a role in leadership again.
Yeah, I know, but my view on that is Steve did make a big mistake and he did serve a pretty big punishment. He lost a year of his career and then he was banned from leadership for 2 years. So he did his time. And I talked about, when you look at precedent in this incident, you look at precedents in the sense that if anyone tries to tamper with the ball again, they're going to lose at least a year of their career. That's the precedent that matters the most. So I'm like, look, Steve Smith made a mistake, but he did his time. And when I look at it now from the perspective of this Australian team and what's best for it, I think Steve Smith in the leadership position, I think, is good for the team right now.
Yeah, I just want to jump in quickly that Mike Atherton, Sachin Tendulkar, Faf du Plessis have all been busted for ball tampering. Sorry, Paul, continue.
Well, no, I was just going to say that I agree that Smith did the wrong thing, but those who say that he should be forever barred from being in a captaincy position, I just think that's taking it to an extreme. Like, do you feel that way in other aspects of life? Like, do you want massive punishments for everything? I don't see how much more you want him to be punished. As Charbel said, a year out of the game, 2 years out of captaincy positions, what that has cost him indirectly in terms of money, it would be millions and millions of dollars. Now, people say, "Oh, he's a rich person. He doesn't, that doesn't matter." But still, it happened. He has been cost millions of dollars. He has lived in ignominy it'll be something that people talk about for the rest of his career. I think that he's served his time, and I'm pleased that he's vice captain, and I will be pleased if Cummins has to miss a game for rotation or whatever reason for that to then lead to Steve Smith having another go at Australian captaincy. I think it could work out quite well that maybe he's never the full-time captain again, but he captains 2 or 3 test matches throughout the rest of his career, and I personally think that would be nice.
And also, you think about that year off. We all know how much Smith loves his cricket and loves batting. So for him to miss out playing for Australia for a year must have been torture for him. So there's that aspect as well. So I agree. He's done his time. It was a big punishment. And I know surely no one will try it again, particularly in Australian circles.
Certainly not. All right. Now, Paul's done a stats comparison. So there's a few key questions for the upcoming Ashes series. So it starts next week. Unbelievably, we've been buried in racism investigations in England, sexting scandals in Australia. The Ashes begins next Wednesday. So there's 3 big battles. Alex Carey v. Josh Inglis for the keeping spot, Travis Head v. Usman Khawaja from the number 5 spot, and Mitchell Starc v. Jai Richardson for the final pace bowling spot. Now, before we get into that, Paul's done a stats analysis. I did speak to Josh Inglis yesterday as part of a press conference. Let's have a watch. G'day, Josh. Ponting, Gilchrist, Warren, they've all sort of backed you publicly in the media. How does it sort of feel when you read those sort of comments?
Yeah, it's really nice. It's really nice to hear from those blokes who are obviously greats for the game. Yeah, it's it's tough. You don't want to read too much into it, because at the end of the day, they're not the guys making the decisions. But for them to say some really nice things about me, yeah, it's nice to hear.
And just quickly, is there anything you gleaned off Shane Warne when you were working with him in the 100? Anything he sort of passed on to you?
Not really. Obviously, he was working heavily with the spinners, and he was a brilliant head coach. He's got tactically, he's excellent. He's got so much knowledge. So nothing really tactically or technically with me, with my batting, but just sort of game sense stuff. He was excellent, and he passed on quite a few things about what the bowler's thinking, and what he's sort of looking to do with their field set and that sort of thing. So yeah, he was good in that sense.
Thanks, mate. Good luck. That was Josh Inglis there. What a terrific talent he is. Paul, so yeah, will you take us through? You've put some stats together.
Yeah, listeners, don't turn off. It's not going to be boring, I hope. But just firstly, the fact that Warne backs him is Warne is quite a loyal guy, I think. Like, if you drew a line through Warne's public attitude to Adam Gilchrist during the journey, I think that the moment they became colleagues at Fox Sports, Warne started picking Gilly in his all-time teams instead of Healy, which he'd already, or Darren Berry, which he'd always done. So I think the fact that they worked together at the 100, maybe if it had been Carey who'd been in the 100 franchise, then Warne would think differently, which is, that's nice. It's good to be loyal. So some quick stats just on the batting, because as I always say, there aren't any meaningful keeping stats, but very similar. So Carey's 30, first class average of 35. Inglis 26, first class average of 34. Carey's had a pretty good patch from 2018-19 onwards. He's averaging 48. From that same period from Inglis onwards, he's averaging 34 because it's basically most of his career. But just recently, since 2021 onwards, in a fairly small sample size, Inglis has averaged 58. I might have said Carey where I meant Inglis, but you know what I meant. The white ball stats, people say you shouldn't look at white ball stats, but sometimes they're interesting. Just the strike rates and the averages. Carey in List A averaged 36, strike rate 87. He's been fantastic playing for Australia. Inglis averaged 32, strike rate 110. And then you get to the T20, Carey averaging 28, strike rate of 127. Inglis averaging 33 and strike rate of 152. And I put those in there just to say that for those of us who have great fond memories of Gilchrist coming out at 5 for 70 and you blink and the score is 5 for 170, as much as Carey's certainly not a defensive batter, he's got a very acceptable first-class strike rate, it would be damn exciting to see Inglis come out, given the license to say, mate, go for it. So I've always been on the sort of Carey side, but in the last couple of days, I'm at the point now where I think it's 50-50. As I said, I really can't comment on who's the better keeper. But in terms of who I want in the side, I've almost got to the point where I'd pick Inglis, even though I have great respect for the way that Carey batted in. I've seen him bat in difficult conditions. So for me, it's almost a toss of the coin at the moment.
Sharbel, who would you pick?
I'm almost like Paul. It's like I wouldn't be disappointed if either one gets picked, like one or the other. I wouldn't be upset. Oh, I would have liked to see him over the other. But I do have a soft spot for Josh Inglis. I think he's a fantastic player. He's so exciting, as Paul said. And Carey has had a bit of a poor Sheffield Shield season, hasn't he? Well, he's got like 5 single-digit scores in a row, so that doesn't strengthen his case, I don't think. But look, as I said, they got both very similar records overall, and they're both very good players. And I don't think either will let the team down. I think they're pretty solid with the gloves, both of them. And I think they can both have a good impact down the order, similar to that notion of what Adam Gilchrist did, batting at 7. So I'd love to see Inglis there because, probably age on his side is more of a long-term option potentially as well. And what he can do in terms of, that power down the order as well. But I think both will play a great role for the team, whoever's picked.
So I guess it comes down to, Carey's probably a slightly safer bet with his experience in the side, whereas Inglis is the sort of adventurous pick. So, yeah, I agree with both of you. I don't think there's a lot between them, and I think you can make a case for either of them.
For all
pretty
that,
strongly.
For all that I've gone on about how I want to be the chief selector, I must admit
This is one you're happy to pass on.
I'm happy to let Bailey deal with this one because
Yeah.
whomever you don't pick, especially if they don't pick Carey, I'd feel really, they have to pick one of them, but you just feel a bit sad to say to Carey, you've been the sort of anointed one for all these years. Obviously, no one has a guarantee, but it's a massive diversion, like a sliding doors moment. If Carey is picked, the odds are the next 7 years, he's the Australian keeper, millions of dollars, playing in front of massive crowds, celebrate, for the rest of his life, he'll be known as a superstar of the game. You don't pick him, he's playing in front of 110 people in the Sheffield Shield games. It may well be that Inglis takes over his 50-over spot as well, and it becomes a trivia question as to who's the most obscure person to ever captain Australia in a game of cricket. It's like, such a big.
No. The question will be who captained the Greater Western Giants in their foundation year and Australia in a one-day game. That'll be the trivia question.
I think it's the Greater Western Sydney Giants for all those AFL.
I don't know. I don't even know what they're called.
It's a good point by Paul though on Carey. He's been around for a little while and he's been the one earmarked as sort of maybe the next keeper. So it's a tough one. If
I was George Bailey, I'd pick Inglis. I mean, I'm going to make a call. If I was the one with the deciding vote, I wouldn't walk out of the room and ask to be excused from the conversation. I would vote.
What makes you so decisive, though, Menace?
Because so I think Inglis has got the X factor. He's a bit younger, and I like the fact that he can come out in two situations. We're 5 for 70, and he can counter attack, or he comes out and we're 5 for 250 and the opposition bowling attack is really tired and he can just make hay. So I like that combination. All right, Head v Khawaja. Paul, give it to me.
Another line ball one. So Khawaja's 34, nearly 35. He's played 44 tests with an average of 41. Head's 27, almost 28. He's played 19 tests with an average of 40. Khawaja's first-class average is 43. Head's first-class average is 40. Now, just trying to draw a line with a line and looking just how they've gone in recent seasons in Australia only, Khawaja has been absolutely fantastic with the exception of one major dip. So I'll exclude the 2014-15 because he only played 2 innings, but from 2013-14 onwards, in first-class cricket in Australia, his averages have been 46, 89, 63, 62. Then the dip begins, 34, 20, 59, 66. So compare those to Head, and Head's in the same years with the same formula, 36, 37, 36, 43, 46, 46, 40, 57, 49. Very good. But, in some ways to say the upside of Khawaja at his best maybe is higher than the upside of Head at his best. There were a lot of off-field, his brother's situation was occurring at the same time as he had that poor run. I don't know whether there's any linkage there or not. But given that he's now seemingly past that bad trot, the question is, he's 34. Is he the right one to go with? And I think if I had to say, well, let's imagine it's going to be a very, very close Ashes series, and it's this pick is going to come down to who wins or loses it. I'm just edging towards Usman Khawaja.
Yeah, right. Charbel?
I think I'm edging towards Khawaja. I've always wanted him in the team. I think I wanted him as opener last summer, actually. Open the batting. When we were looking for an opener when Warner was out, because Khawaja's record as opener in Test cricket has been very good, and his record in Australia, even in Test cricket, is outstanding. One thing I'll say about Head, I think his numbers in Sheffield Shield cricket, in first-class cricket, as Paul has said, very similar to his Test numbers. He gets a start and then gets out. I think that's been synonymous with his career in red ball cricket across, first-class state cricket and also Test cricket. So I think Khawaja has the potential for the biggest scores in this series. And if it's going to be a close series, then you take those extra runs. It's going to be very important. So, again, it's a close one. I was talking about age with Inglis versus Carey. Head's got that on his side here, but I'd love to see Usman in the team in Australian conditions. He's very, very good. Very, very good in Australia.
He's a classy player. I'd probably go Travis Head, though. I like the fact that he's done well in Test cricket so far, but yet to really fulfill his potential. And I think he's ready now to take that next step. Khawaja had his chance and he blew it. He was dropped because he underperformed. He underperformed when Smith and Warner were suspended, when we needed him. And look, you wouldn't lose much by picking Khawaja. He's a great player, but I'd be picking Head for the future. I think he's got leadership potential. He's just made 100, but a bit like the Inglis and Carey one, there's just not much between them. I really think you're not going to lose much. And I actually don't think, like, if it's a tough situation in the Ashes, I don't know who I'd prefer to walk out there, because, Khawaja, he's a great player, but he can, like anyone, he can get out to a good ball. But I don't think there's a lot between them in that sense.
Yeah, it's a good point. And this is irrelevant, but from a personal point of view,
he can get out to a good ball.
What did I say that was a good point?
No, I just anyone can. I mean,
that's true. No, I mean, your overall point was good, that they are very similar. Yep.
Yeah.
But I feel as though Khawaja's been unlucky. Like, I think what is it, 3 times maybe that he's been excluded from the side. You could never say he was dropped unfairly, but I think each time it would have been not unfair had he been persisted with. Others have been persisted with longer. So in some ways, I wouldn't mind him getting another go. That's not obviously a reason to pick him, but I'd be quite happy if he was picked, because I think he does deserve another go. I heard Jim Maxwell on ABC radio yesterday talking to Karen Ty, and he said what I also think, that Nick Maddinson may well be better than both of them, and it would have been very interesting if they had actually gone with him.
Yeah, or Glenn Maxwell. There's a question there which we'll get to. All right, and then the final spot up for grabs, Mitchell Starc v. Jai Richardson. This is not officially up for grabs, and I actually think, from what Cummins has said in the media, that I think they'll stick with Starc. But Paul?
Okay, so Starc, age 31, about to turn 32. He has an average of 27.6 in Test cricket and a strike rate of 49. And he's taken 431 wickets in first-class cricket, an average of 26.7, and an amazing strike rate of 48. Jai Richardson, age 25, has taken just the 90 first-class wickets, but at an average of 21.1, and the same strike rate of 48. Interestingly, Starc has a batting average of 23 in first-class cricket, Richardson 22. So you're not going to lose anything from the batting side of thing if Richardson is picked. And that average of 21.1, it's not from the hugest sample size, but gosh, anyone who's averaging 21.1 with the ball in Australia, that is pretty impressive. Looking at Mitchell Starc's recent seasons, again, just looking at first-class cricket in Australia only, very mixed. So from 2015-16 onwards, 19, so fantastic. 33, 19, fantastic. 28, okay. 17, magnificent. And then the big one, last season, he averaged 45, and that's what's thrown this debate open. And then the second one was, back down to Richardson, starting in 27-18. His averages were 30, average, 19, fantastic, 27, okay, and then 13 so far this summer. So you add it all up, and I just think, if I was an English batter, I'd be more scared of Richardson than I would of Starc. I know that they're saying, well, you want Starc to play in the second test because it's the pink ball test and he's the best. He needs the run, therefore, in the first test because you don't want him to go into that game short of a gallop. I get all that, but I just think if I'm actually picking the side, I'm not going to think about that. I'm just thinking, who's the most likely to do damage? And I think at this stage, Richardson is more likely to do damage than Starc. I think Starc still should play a role at some point in the series, but I'd be picking Richardson in the first test. I don't think they will, though.
Yeah, great article by Ben Horn in the Daily Telegraph on the weekend that outlined the battle that Mitchell Starc, how difficult last season was for Mitchell Starc, with his father being diagnosed with aggressive cancer at the beginning of summer, and Mitchell Starc's late father, Paul, did want Mitchell to play on. I was commentating on Sunday where at Manly Oval, and Mitchell Starc's manager is the president there, and I think it's just a really sad situation that Mitchell Starc's father went pretty quickly, maybe quicker than they thought, and it just turned out Mitchell was, in a bubble with the Australian team. So you can imagine the conflict going through him at the time playing for Australia. So I think that, you just got to put that out there and have some understanding to the situation. But then also Ben Horn writes that, had the catches been held off Mitchell Starc's bowling at the SCG, the Indian series might have ended very differently, and we wouldn't be talking about Starc's form at all. He also points out that had the catch in the World Cup final of Williamson been taken, Starc's figures may be very different. So, look, it was a really nice article by Ben Horn, and I think it did make a compelling case for why you could stick with Starc, and Cummins was quoted in it saying that Starc performs a very important role, not only as the sort of enforcer, but also roughing up the patch outside for Nathan Lyon to try and drop into.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that the bit like with Khawaja, I'd be more than happy from sentimental reasons to see Starc go in and do well. But I just think when Horn's saying, well, if the catch off Williamson had been taken, things might have been different in the World Cup. That you could also say, had Williamson hit a terrible waist-high leg stump full toss for 6 as he should have smoothly, then we wouldn't have even been talking about that. I mean, 4 overs, none for 60 in the World Cup final. There's no way you can write that as anything other than poor. It's only 4 overs. It's only T20, I know, but I don't think you can defend that. So, as I said, I'd go with Richardson. But what about you, Sharbel?
Yeah.
I think another argument for Starc, I think his record at the start of a series is too good to ignore.
I think your microphone cable is a bit loose or something. Just plug it in there.
Menace.
It's been rattling around a bit. It's all right. This is nothing, Jalisa. I mean, Sharbel. Continue.
Is that all right now?
Yeah, you sound fine.
Oh, cool. I was saying Starc's record at the start of a series is very good. So you look at I think his numbers last summer, they showed us. First, second test, very good. But then third, fourth, fifth test, his numbers go down significantly. So I think it's worth playing him at the Gabba, and then you have to play him in Adelaide with the pink ball. He is dynamite with the pink ball. And then maybe later on you can look at getting Richardson in the side after that.
Fair
so I know, Paul, you were saying start with Richardson and then see how Starc fits in later in the series. I think it's the other way around, because Starc's record in the start of a series is just outstanding. He's done it time and time again in his career in the early stages of a series, and I think it's worth persisting with that again this time around.
But if you start with him in the third test, then that is the start of the
series. Well, possibly that could happen, but you start with him in the third test, you miss out Starc with the pink ball too. So there's the challenge.
True.
And
well,
then,
maybe start with him in the second.
Say you played Richardson in the first test, he absolutely kills it. You've got the consistency of Hazelwood and Cummins. Who do you leave out then in the Adelaide test?
Yeah, drop Lyon.
It's
drop
a great
Lyon
position
for
to
the
be
Adelaide test. Yeah.
That's
true. And I agree with that as well. Yeah.
I guess you'd be happy there if they all kill it in the first test. So again, it's one that either way, whatever they go, you can understand the decision. So looking forward to that.
Great. Well, 3 tough selection debates. Let's move on to the cricket headlines brought to you by Piccolo Podcast. Let's get straight into all the domestic cricket action. Well, there was a Marsh Cup 50-over domestic game. Queensland chased down South Australia's 274 in just 42.1 overs with 6 wickets in hand. Performances to note, Alex Carey made 101 in the loss. That came off 93 balls. His coach, Jason Gillespie, said afterward that he felt Carey left a few out there, that he could have made that a really big 100. Henry Hunt made 61 off 74 deliveries. He's obviously in the Australia A squad. Travis Head, 29, but he did make a century in the Shield match. Matt Renshaw was the standout player for Queensland. 156 not out off 109 deliveries in the chase. And I think he's someone who we'll see back in Australian colours in the next couple of years. And one of the great comebacks in Australian cricket, someone from out your way, Sharbel, in Western Sydney, Garinda Sandhu, the one that stood up this podcast many years ago, never came on, still never been on. He took 4 for 44 off 9 overs for Queensland, took a hat trick. And this is a guy I thought was never going to play state cricket again. He left New South Wales for Tasmania. Obviously, Khawaja has lured him up to the Goldie or the Sunshine Coast. So Sandhu, former Australian one-day player. Yep. I'm a big Renshaw fan. Charbel, do you think he's got a big future at the top level?
I do, and I thought that when he started for Australia a few years ago. He was that traditional test opener, that solid test opener, good technique, and disappointed he's been out of the side for so long. And now he's got that element of what we saw on the weekend, that element in his white ball game as well. And he's produced that sort of innings in the Big Bash a couple of times too. So if he can have that all-round ability across formats, that's going to make there's very, very hard to ignore from a selector's point of view. So I love seeing him perform because I'm a big fan of Renshaw.
He played well on the Australian Tour of India in 2017, where
That's
we
right.
almost won there. We sort of capitulated towards the end of the series, but I think he's someone you might take with you next year to these 3 tours of the subcontinent.
He hasn't done enough for me yet.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe he hasn't done
tough
enough.
marks. Paul Dennett.
No, I'd like to, I'm not ruling a line through him by any means. Just looking at his record now, first class average of about 37. And you're looking at his recent summers. So far this season, he's averaging 40. Last season, 63. Season before that, 20. Went to England, averaged 24. And the season before that in Australia, 22. I would like to see another season of, he's averaging 40 at the moment this season. If he can average 80 and really have a massive back half, then maybe. But at the moment, I'm not so sure. But
I agree with that. He needs to do a bit more. I agree with Paul there. He needs to do a little bit more.
Trouble, is this moustache Movember inspired, or is this your normal look?
Nah, mate, I've never grown a good beard in my whole life, and that's continuing.
Yeah,
but I just haven't shaved. Just been lazy.
Well, it's the 1st of December tomorrow, so you can shave for then. For those watching on YouTube will understand some, little bit of fluff above Sharbal's lip. All right, now moving on to the Sheffield Shield. Queensland beat South Australia by 8 wickets. Performances to note: Bryce Street 87, Marnus Labuschagne 110, tuning up nicely for the Test series. Usman Khawaja 52 not out of 36 deliveries. Matt Kuhneman 5 for 25. He's certainly a player that might figure on Australia's tour of the subcontinent next year. He's a left-arm orthodox spinner. He's taken, I think, already 2 5-wicket hauls before this one, so that's his 3rd. And I think Kuhneman's, he could go on those tours. Garinda Sandhu 6 for 57, just mentioned him. And for South Australia, Travis Head made 101 in the second innings in the loss. Then in the next game, Tasmania chased down 318 in the 4th innings to beat WA and shoot them up the table. It was a gutsy declaration by WA skipper Sam Whiteman. Whiteman made 176 not out in that game. Joe Richardson took 4 for 53. For Tasmania, Caleb Jewell 102 and Jordan Silk 83 not out in the chase. In the other game, New South Wales and Victoria played out a wet draw, but Curtis Patterson did make a dashing century in the second innings. So good to see him back in form. So now, look, the Sheffield Shield takes what feels like a 6-month break, but I think it's only 2 and a bit months for the Big Bash. And as it stands going into the break, on the bottom of the table, New South Wales on 3.93 points. South Australia, 9.12 points in 5th. 4th position, Victoria, 17.81. Tasmania, with that winner, go up to 3rd. They're on 20 points. Queensland are in 2nd spot, 20.77 points, the defending champ. And then Western Australia, 22.24 points, go into the break on top. What's your takeaway from that round of Shield cricket, Paul?
Well, it was a pretty interesting game, Queensland against South Australia. The fact that they had to call the game off on the first day because of the wet patch in the middle of the pitch.
That's right, yeah.
Impressive that Labuschagne got through that and then scored a century. I thought I don't understand the criticism. I think that you're entitled to not have a wet patch in the middle of the pitch. So that
I heard Kuhneman say that it was so bad that they turned up to the second day thinking they weren't going to be able to play, and they were surprised that it had come up so well overnight.
Yeah, and I saw Chad Sayers' tweet saying, something to the effect of, well, bowlers don't get to walk off when it's a road, which, I mean, I get where he's coming from. That there are too many pitches that are too flat in Australia, but when you get to the point where something's dangerous, What a disaster it would have been for Australia if, Labuschagne copped a short one that broke a finger and put him out of the Ashes. No one wants to see that. So I think that they did the right thing there. Just in terms of what are they doing with New South Wales, Victoria? Are they pro-ratering the points that they're scored in there? So they dividing by 3 and multiplying by 2 for the points that they've scored to take into account the fact that they're playing 3 games, or are they going to play fewer games against others? Has that been? I looked up, but I can't seem to find the answer to that.
Yeah, I don't think they know exactly how the second half is going to transpire depending on the borders, but they can play each team up to 3 times, and I think they need a minimum of 7 rounds, I think, to get a competition in. So,
right, okay.
Yeah, it'll be a cobbled affair. But just a comment here from David Goddard. David, this is a comment. I'm not watching anymore as I find the constant drinking of coffee and water so annoying and unprofessional. Podcast from now on. Well, that's another happy customer.
Sorry, David.
Yeah, no, I'm not sorry. Don't listen to the show either.
Need my water.
Oh, can't drink water. What a miserable F. Anyway, all right. So next one, bit of news coming out of Western Australia. Christina Matthews, the head of the WACA, thinks the Perth test is a 50-50 prospect at this stage. And you would think that the MCG, the SCG, maybe Manuka Oval are affirming. I would think Hobart's chances have drifted like Tim Payne's career. Sharbel, I guess, where would you like to see a 5th test played?
Here in Sydney. Bring it over here again. Yeah, let's do it. The players will be here. They'll be here anyway, wouldn't they? They would be for the
what do you think
test?
about the idea of a day-night test at the MCG to finish
That'd
the
be
Ashes?
nice. Yeah, that'd be cool too. Yeah, happy with that. So,
yeah, I don't like that idea at all. Actually, I think that's a terrible idea. I think that is
the problem is Sydney. The problem is, Manners, in Sydney around that time, you almost always get rain affecting the matches. So I don't want that again for 2 tests in the Ashes this summer. So, look, a day-night test at the MCG will be an awesome spectacle, wouldn't it?
But aren't you concerned? So obviously England, massively boosted by the pink ball. It brings their swing bowlers right into the game, and also we are, susceptible to good swing bowling. Why would we play a second pink ball test match and say the series is tied to the people are imagining? And that's the difference. The fact that Jimmy Anderson's got the pink ball under lights when the Ashes is being decided. I mean, it would be great marketing, but it's not good for the results on the field.
Yeah, that's the way you got to do it.
That makes you a better team, though. I'd rather win that way, or put in a good performance in difficult circumstances than producing on unfavorable conditions.
Should we just give him the Ashes, Sharbel? Should we just give him the Ashes?
No. We've got 3 other tests if there's 2 day nights to win those. So we'll be all right.
Every other country, and I've said this consistently, and I criticize Australia when they need to be criticized, but on this front, we lead the world. Every other country has this nonsensical notion that you can do whatever you want with pitch preparation because that's what a home ground advantage is. And I say, no, a home ground advantage is you're playing at home in conditions that you've grown up with and are familiar with. To then further accentuate that by doctoring things, which every other country does, is wrong. And Australia, had we wanted to, during the Shane Warne era, could have turned every pitch into the SCG. And then in more recent times, we could have played every pitch on a WACA-like pitch, and we would never have lost a bloody test match. So these other countries that doctor it up and then carry on as though that's the right thing to do, like, we've still got a winning record over every other side, and we haven't done that. Let's not start doing it now. If it's decided that the best thing for the Ashes, given all the circumstances, is that the 5th test is a day-night test match, bring it on. But I think it'll be in Perth.
It's not only that, you build your skill set at home in a range of conditions. You're going to be well set overseas too. I think India's the kind of team they used to really prepare a lot of turning pitches and focus on spin.
CA paying you?
Hold on, Manners.
Paying you both to support this day-night concept. It's
Why
scheduled as a day match. Scheduled as a day match.
But my point is, it's good to be challenged at home because that sets you up and improves you as a player.
Great, yeah. Tell that to the Aussie team after the 2010.
I'm talking.
Lost the Ashes. Yeah, it was good to be challenged. Anyway,
but what I'm saying is, you look at other teams.
Style.
What I'm saying is, you look at India. They're focused on, okay, how we're going to fix our pace bowling, and they've really focused on producing producing more paces at home, and then they've been able to perform well overseas and get wins. If they stick to, trying to win at home like Bangladesh did to us earlier in the year, they did nothing in the World Cup, it doesn't serve you any good. That's my point.
All I'm saying is that if we're going to live the way we've always lived, if you have to say what is the best thing for cricket for this pitch, and if that is to play a day-night game because we're going to get an average crowd of 25,000 rather than 15,000, that's the end of the argument.
I agree with that. I think it'd be a great spectacle.
I'm with
But I do think it'll
All
be
right.
Perth. I think they'll get there to Perth.
I don't think so. Christina Matthews was not sounding too positive. Anyway, all right, speaking of Perth, well, they did host a cricket match last Saturday night. It was the Women's Big Bash League final, and the Perth Scorchers have won their very first WBBL title. They beat the Adelaide Strikers in the final. The Scorchers made 5 for 146, batting first, and restricted Adelaide to 6 for 134. 2 games before the final, Amanda Jade Wellington, playing for the Strikers, took the best ever WBBL figures in the Eliminator, I'm going to call it. It could be something else, but I just make up the names every year, as I'm sure the organisers do. Amanda Jade Wellington, 5 for 8, beating 5 for 15 by Molly Strano. So the best ever figures in the WBBL. In a wonderful turn of events, Harmanpreet Kaur, the Indian international, was named the WBBL player of the tournament. And we've seen Umek Chand come out for the male BBL. Sharbel, this is going to be great for the WBBL to have an Indian player of the tournament.
It's brilliant. And, we saw the Indian influence in the tournament and, the interest overseas because of it. Fantastic. And, the figures around the WBBL, the ratings and the crowd, I think it just shows that women's cricket is well and truly going from strength to strength. And I hope it's time now the BCCI looks at this closely and says, women's IPL, what have we got to do to make it happen, and then make it happen? So very, very good.
And then when they do that, I hope they also don't then prevent the Indian women from coming to the WBBL. That would be so
100%.
disappointing. They're just as likely to, but hopefully they don't. The one, this is the only slightly disappointing thing was, and I feel this way with all cricket in Perth, the new stadium is great, but I think the casual observer to that game would have looked and thought, oh, there's no one there, because in a 60,000 seat stadium, 15,500 gets swallowed up. Yet if that had been at the Wacker, that would have looked pretty close to full, and the atmosphere would have been stupendous. So I still think it's a pity that they can't use the Wacker more for some of these games, and just only redirect games to the Perth Stadium when there's absolutely going to be a massive crowd. Even the Ashes, if the 5th test does go ahead in Perth, they might get 35,000 day one, and it'll look okay, but everyone around the world will be saying, why are there so many vast empty spaces? So I don't know. It's one of these things that it's great that Adelaide and Perth now have massive stadiums, and it's pragmatic that they've partnered with the Aussie rules to get them there. But part of me yearns for a 25,000 seat stadium that can be full and the atmosphere looks fantastic.
Yeah, terrific viewing figures for the WBBL final. They had 535,000 viewers, which is the combined average audience and the highest ever for any WBBL game in the competition's 7-year history. And also it attracted the biggest ever WBBL standalone crowd of 15,511, which smashed the record of 5,653 seasons ago. So it may not have looked great, but it was a record-breaking crowd. Throughout the whole tournament, 5.36 million viewers tuned in. That's up from 15%. So, Shaba, when you look at those increases, apparently the A-League game at the same time had 70,000 viewers, and the WBBL has over 500,000. Where do you see the potential of the tournament?
Potential of the tournament, I can't even tell you what the potential is. It's that endless, to be honest. The interest is growing, and what that's going to do is inspire a lot of youngsters to take up cricket as well and saying, I want to be involved in this too. So just the influence on, up and coming players and saying, I want to be a part of this and being, really inspired by what's going on. Like a player like Marizanne Kapp, she was ill all week, and then comes in and produces a player of the match performance in the final. Yeah, fantastic. So, as I said, look, the potential is there. I think the quality is improving because there's a lot more professionalism now. So I think investing in this is a no-brainer. So fantastic.
You think millions more dollars now will flow into women's cricket over the coming years as the broadcast rights for the competition gains in value?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I also note that as usual, the organisers are listening to this show because they have reacted to our complaints about the WBBL schedule being a bit congested. Alistair Dobson at the end of the tournament, I think there is room now to try and, fill out more marquee TV games. He looks at like Thursday and Friday night as having more games for the telly there. And Paul, I know we spoke about it a couple of shows ago, but I think that's the next step, not sort of saturating the weekends.
Yeah, the next step, I mean, to their credit, the growth has been superb, and Cricket Australia do deserve a lot of credit for that. It wasn't that long ago that we were celebrating the fact that every game was being streamed, let alone the fact that it's, on the Cricket Australia stream. Now, every game is available at least on KO and Foxtel. So the fact that we are now sort of saying, let's take it to the next level, and it's going to be difficult in this slot because a free-to-air network is going to be reluctant, I think, to put it on their number one channel because they have their regular, and that happens with men's cricket as well, that you don't want to alienate your regular viewers from watching whatever inane reality TV rubbish they have. But that's the way it is. But if they have it on 7 Mate live every night, 7:30, as I said last time, and pretty much have it every night of the week, then I think lots of people, so many people at this time of year who have watched the football codes are sort of, and I know that the A-League has started, but the ones that the NRL and the AFL are craving something. And I think that this can be it. And I think I agree with Charbel that the limit is almost it's almost indescribable what it could get to in the next few years. If you draw a curve as to where it's gone, and you just keep on going at that level, then it's going to just get bigger and bigger.
Yes, cannot wait for next summer's WBBL. All right, though, this Sunday, though, the men's Big Bash starts. It starts at the SCG, the Sixers hosting the Stars. And, boys, I have completely stuffed this up. I have said to my kids I would go and watch their dance concert on Sunday night at the same time the Big Bash is starting.
Can't get out of that one now, Menas. That's it.
I know. It's silly me agreeing to it, but the tournament starts. So there's a few things to note. I think the tournament does get a boost by Australia's World Cup win. The fact now that our players are all World Cup winners does add a little bit of luster to the tournament. And looking at the schedule, once we get past the Australia AV Australia game, most of the Australian players that aren't in the test squad will be available for the whole Big Bash. So I actually think we're going to see a really strong tournament.
I agree with that. I think having the Australian players available is crucial to the quality of the Big Bash, particularly given the length of it. So it's incredible how fast this has crept up on us. Like, I've got to do my research and see who the favourites are and who my pick is. But
don't worry, I won't put you on the spot, Charbel. Don't worry.
If you put me on the spot now, I wouldn't have been able to answer you because it's just crept up so quickly. It's like we just finished the World Cup and getting into Test cricket again. So, but yeah, look, I hope the Thunder do well this year. My Thunder.
Yeah. Okay. Chris Jordan has been signed by the Sydney Sixers. He's replacing Carlos Brathwaite. That's a really good signing. Now, Paul, 2 rule changes. And I think you actually like the second one. The first rule change is there's a time limit now on the batter getting to the crease and facing up. So, they'll have to run out there. But the second one is that they want to limit the amount of times a team can send drinks out to the field to send a message. And Paul, you and I get so frustrated with the pace of the game sometimes. I just think that makes sense. I mean, you just can't send someone out with a drink every over. Every ball they do it.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's good. But it's not really the Big Bash that it worries me. It's more Test cricket that I'd love if they brought that rule into a version of that rule into Test cricket. Plus, it's a bit hard to take them that seriously when they've still got that inane timeout that exists. After how many overs? When's it come again? I've forgotten everything. But get rid of that. Of all the innovations that they made, that one drove me mental.
The tactical timeout.
Yeah, the boring
whatever it's
timeout.
called. Yeah, we got the power surge was good. The X Factor didn't work. Cool. Well, that starts this Sunday. Cannot wait for the Big Bash. And look, I have to say, I haven't really done a deep dive, but I do think the Perth Scorchers, last year's losing finalists, are a dangerous side. They could be in the position the Sydney Sixers were, where they can play very few home games. I know they've got their first home game, but then it's probably going to be very few home games they get after that. And they could, like the Sydney Sixers, build up this nice sort of family atmosphere. And yeah, so look out for the Perth Scorchers. They could do the WBBL, BBL double. And final bit of news, and I guess, Paul, you probably watched a lot of it last night, the test match, India v New Zealand. New Zealand held on for a thrilling draw. They were 9 down. Do you just want to take us through the closing stages, ball by ball?
The closing stages were unusual in that it just sort of seemed like nothing much was happening, but there was this understated tension, and that was every over the umpires were checking the light meters, and every over there was this feeling that the commentators were engendering that that'll be it, and then the umpires would check it, and all of a sudden they'd stay on, and suddenly the crowd that was larger than you might think for a fifth day of a test match in India would roar, and you'd realize, oh, there actually really is an atmosphere here. And it was one of those. It was a really close finish, but the thing I'll say for New Zealand is they never looked like getting out that last pair. That it wasn't as though what you normally expect is players and misses and big LBW shouts. And there was one LBW that they reviewed that clearly, albeit only just, pitched outside leg. Other than that, the final pair kind of did it quite easily. And when they eventually did say that they're going off for bad light, there was a strange feeling of inevitability about it. So congratulations to New Zealand. I mean, it's hard to be critical of them, but I wish that they'd gone for the runs. I didn't think that the run rate required in that final day was beyond them, but fair play to them. They got the draw. They've only ever had 2 wins in India, ever. 2 solitary test matches. They've never won a series. So they now face them in their second test match. If they win that, they'll create history.
Sharbel, what did you think? Why was Coley not there?
Rested for the first test.
Sharma.
He's in for the second.
I think
he's in for the second test.
Was it Bumrah?
Yeah, so they rested Rohit Sharma. Yeah.
Rohit Sharma and Coley. And Ian Smith wasn't happy about it, and I agree with him. Like, I get that those players deserved a rest. I mean, they've been playing since, who knows when. But the notion that players wholesale getting rested from a test match because of white ball affairs beforehand doesn't sit well with me and is not good for the future, for Test cricket being the prime form of the game. So that's something that is regrettable. I understand why they did it, but I hope that doesn't happen again.
All righty. Yeah, that was the cricket headlines. Let's wrap this show up. We've got the questions from the comments and we've got Can't Let It Go. Now, Sharbel, I don't know if you ever Can't Let It Go, so you've got a couple of minutes to think about it. But if you don't worry, because you're replacing Jaleesa and she rarely has one. So it'd be true to form. All right, let's just go through the questions. No, there's actually no real questions, just comments. Jose's
just about the coffee and the water.
Well, yeah, F that guy. Day-night test at the SCG, please, from Jose. And then another question here from Brewer. When does Australia play New Zealand in tests again? Seems like a good matchup that we don't get to see much. Could be a rivalry to combat the Ashes if nurtured properly. I don't think we'll ever play New Zealand again in test cricket. Paul, I think we played them like once, twice this century. Isn't that sort of true to form enough?
Well, compared to history, we've played them immensely. I always say, We played our first test match. The first time we allowed New Zealand to play at a test match in Australia was 1973-74, 96 years after we first invited England out. So the nation that's 20,000 kilometres away, we invited out. And then the one that's next door, 96 years later, we invited them out. Albeit we had played one test over there. We played one in 1946 in New Zealand. And we made them wait 25 years till they came out here. And since then, we've just treated them shamefully. And Brewer is absolutely correct. It is a ready-made rivalry, ready to go. and we should be playing them regularly. We should be giving them a real chance to come here, not like last time when they turned up and were thrown onto the bounciest pitch in the world with no warm-ups. Nurture the rivalry, because we haven't got that many. That we've got England, we've got India. What others do we make money off? South Africa don't like to come out for the Boxing Day Test match. That rivalry probably loses money. The Pakistan rivalry is another one that we should be nurturing, but at this stage, I'd say that we lose money on that. New Zealand, we should be showing them the love, and we're just following 145 years of history and not. So, yeah, the next time we play them, probably, they might do something to coincide with the Brisbane Olympics 2032, give them one test match at the Gabba or something.
I did miss this question from Jose. Do you guys think Maxwell's test career is over? I think the selectors didn't treat him fairly. Jose, I kind of think it is over, but I think we'll know next year. If he doesn't go,
I was going to say that next year. Yeah.
If he goes to the subcontinent, maybe he'll play him in.
Jose, if you tune into my other podcast, which is called Lamenting Glenn Maxwell's Test Career, it's a 746 episode series. Look, I hope it's not over.
There's a 5,000 word essay there, Paul, saying that Maxwell should be the keeper at the Gabba. But anyway, continue.
Keeper and captain and opening bowler and opening batsman, and umpire. But I think that I didn't expect he'd get picked for the Ashes. But I agree with Sharbel. His wedding is potentially going to get in the way of things in February. Hopefully, they do pick him on those tours. Hopefully, he does well enough to finally next summer get his first ever Australian soil test match. And I've said it a million times on this podcast that if Maxwell, a once-in-a-generation player with a very fine first-class record, if he goes through his entire career never playing a test match on Australian soil, that's very, very disappointing.
Agree with that. A player of his talent, a player of his talent should have at least one test on home soil. It's crazy. Yeah.
All righty. Thanks for all the questions for everybody that's watching and left them in the comments. Now it's can't let it go time. That little bit of cricket news you just can't let go through to the keeper. Charbel, what have you got for us? Oh, he's frozen, has he?
I don't think he's frozen. I think he's just got nothing and he's decided not to move so that you'll think he's frozen.
Paul, what's your cut?
I actually think he's frozen. All right. My can't let it go is we talk.
If he's not frozen, he's keeping very still for those watching.
This is very impressive acting. When we come to the Boxing Day Test match,
it's a great Jalisa impression.
When we come to the Boxing Day Test match, which is going to be the third test of the series, there's a chance that England could be on the verge of very, very unwanted history. Because if you think back to their last performances on Australian soil, in the last two tours, they've lost 5-0 and 4-0. Now, the last test match of the tour before that, they won the last test in 2010-11. So that's 10 tests in a row without a victory in Australia. As things stand, that's their equal second most period without a win. From the late 80s, early 90s, they went 10 tests without a win, although many of those were draws. And when Bradman was smashing them everywhere, from the third test of the MCG 1936-37 through to the summer of 50-51, they went 12 tests without a win. So if Australia can not get defeated in the first test and the second test, and then do the same in the third test, then this will be the worst sequence in the 145 years of England-Australia cricket as far as England are concerned in test matches in Australia. And I, for one, as much as I do want this Ashes series to be competitive, I'd love it if we could also get that record chalked up as well. You
want a historically bad run by England. All righty. I like it. I really like that stat. Really like that stat. It's great stuff.
A tie in each of the first two tests, and then actually a tie in each of the first three tests. That would allow my stat to continue, but it also wouldn't ruin the series. That's what I would like.
And you can imagine that the fans would be thrilled. Sharbel, we lost you for a second there, but great.
Typical internet
impression. Yeah. What do you have a bit of cricket news that you can't let go of?
I don't know if it's news. I've probably just some of the responses to my tweets last night about the test match, the India-New Zealand one. A couple of India fans. I know some wonderful India fans on Twitter. Fantastic. But there was a couple that said New Zealand only scraped the draw against the depleted India team. I was having none of it, to be honest. I thought we hear so often about India being able to produce 2, 3, 4 excellent international teams, and here they had a side still having Ashwin, Jadeja, Akshar Patel in their lineup. And I think there wasn't enough credit given to the New Zealand team because you lose a toss on that sort of pitch, it's not easy to stay in the game. And I think New Zealand did an excellent job of staying with India right throughout, and then seeing out a draw at the end is an excellent effort. So I think you got to have full credit to New Zealand for the fight that they showed.
Yeah, great one. Excellent. Can't let it go. Now, my can't let
Not
it
bad
go.
the last minute.
Yeah, you did very well. Now, my can't let it go is that the ICC in Europe are offering the men's and women's Ashes on ICC TV. If you live in Europe, you can pay, I think it's €20 to stream both the men's Ashes and the women's Ashes. And I think this is so good that if you're someone that's a fan of cricket in Europe or you're an expat, that there's a way of, legally going on and watching it. And I saw a couple of people replying to the ICC's tweet complaining that they're charging an emerging area to watch it. But I just don't get this sort of attitude where people just think everything has to be for free. I mean, I think if you're not going to pay €20 to watch both Ashes, then I don't think that's overpriced or anything. I think it's a very fair thing. And I think, it offers access to a huge market.
I don't think it's unfair to charge for it, but it might have been in their best interests to not charge for it. But that €20, it's not a huge amount. But for many people, it's just the act of paying itself. You've got to get your credit card out and work out what to do. And if it's free, I think that whatever the audience is going to be might be doubled, and that might be the better for cricket in the long term. So great that they're making it available, but I have some sympathy with those who say it should be free.
So do I. And there is other ways to make revenue on that as well. Look, I understand €20 is not much, but if you make it free, it doesn't mean you won't make revenue on it at all. You got the
sell ads
increased
and stuff.
viewership and ads and all that stuff as well. So
I suppose the other thing is that
it's nice to see that it's available there.
Maybe the problem if they made it free was there'd be lots of people who'd use a VPN and then tap into it and get it for free. Whereas if you got to pay, maybe that makes it a little bit harder.
And I just remember, when I was living and traveling through Europe, I'd sort of search out these. Usually, actually, it was like Irish bars or English bars that had Sky Sports on them, and so I'd search them out and end up, camping in front of a TV in a bar watching the cricket for 3 hours, and the publican couldn't get rid of me, and I'm like, and then when the bar would be like closing, I'd be like, but come on, he's getting near his 100, Steve Warry's almost there, let me stay. So I'm just glad that for people in a similar situation that there's an option now. Well, that's it for this edition of Cricket Unfiltered. Thanks everybody for watching. Sharbel, thanks for joining us. Great stuff. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Pleasure to talk to you, Menners, even though you had a dig at about my facial hair. It's all good. And nice to speak to you again, Paul.
We'll sort that out in the microphone for next episode. But, I'll give you an 8 out of 10. I mean, if that guy, David, has got this far, David Goddard, what I want you to do now is I want you to go into your app and unsubscribe.
No.
You should unsubscribe.
David Goddard
unsubscribe.
was just having a nice, gentle jibe. Please don't unsubscribe. Don't listen to Menace's rudeness. And also,
he doesn't want me to drink water anymore.
I don't think he meant forever, although maybe. Also, in terms of beards, you and I have got two of the worst beards ever. I think Sharbel's got the best of the three beards. My beard's only again.
No way. Mine's is terrible.
Anyway,
it's barely a beard.
Thanks for coming on, Sharbel. It's been good. It's been good.
Thanks for having me on, boys. Good on you.
Paul Dennett, thank you very much. Any parting words for the listeners?
No. Enjoy the cricket.
Great. All right, everybody. Thanks for those that have watched. Thanks for those that have listened. We'll be back next week. Paul and I are going to be doing daily Ashes updates. We're not sure exactly how they'll be, if they'll be live or pre-recorded. We might record them in the morning and hope they're relevant at the end of play. We'll see. But look, thanks everybody for watching. David, go away.